Good afternoon, everyone. We'll get started here in just a second. Thank you for joining. All right, I think we'll get started. I think we have a majority of everybody that had responded has had the opportunity to join. I want to welcome everyone, first of all, and thanks for taking a little time this afternoon to join us. My name's Bill Giffen. I'm with TC Wealth Partners and Trust Company of Illinois. Extremely excited about this call today. And before we do get started, I do want to thank our partners from Hartford Funds. We have Tom Dubray and John Deal from Hartford on the call with us today. For those that are unaware, Hartford is an investment management company. Currently, right now, I believe they oversee about 150 billion in assets, and they manage about 50 different portfolios or funds for individuals and companies around the world. And we're fortunate enough to have two of those members here with us today. In addition to that, though, they've done some significant work with MIT AgeLab. And really in regards to looking at the client and kind of their lifestyle and the aging and quality of life and other topics like this. And so Tom and John and I and a few others from the organization were having a conversation about some of this content. And we just felt like this would be a great opportunity to share some of this with our clients and others in the community that may be helpful or thought-provoking or create dialogue with you and your advisors as you think about this moving forward or as you experience it right now. So again, I want to thank Tom and John for joining us. One quick thing I would want to note before I turn it over to Tom is there is a question icon on your computer on the right side. At any point, if you'd like to click on that, and type in a question and then send it. I'll be able to see that. And at the end of this, if there's any specific questions that I can offer up for John and Tom, I will do that. So again, Tom, thanks for leading this effort and really bringing this to us. We truly appreciate your partnership. And with that, I'll turn it over to you for some comments and introduction to John. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And we really appreciate the opportunity to partner with TC Wealth Partners. All the advisors, the employees in the firm, as well as all of your clients. We really thank you for the opportunity to share a few words today. Before I introduce John Deal, who's our speaker, maybe just to elaborate a step further on Bill's comments. MIT's AgeLab has been around for about 25 years, and Hartford Funds was one of the leading partners 25 years ago. In fact, John Deal heads that relationship and has headed that for the last 25 years with them. And the whole role that the lab really, has as a mission statement is to really understand the aging population. And their research is funded by every industry really in the world. Because if you think about it, everyone's client is aging at the exact same time. And so whether you sell cars in your GM or Tesla, or you're in the financial services industry in your Hartford Funds, or you work for TC Wealth Partners, it's really important to really understand the clients and their evolution as they age through their life so that you can help them in the day-to-day decision process. And as we relate to that research, we want to help our clients on more of the qualitative side. A lot of what financial planners do for our clients is very quantitative in nature: stocks, bonds, cash, asset allocation, financial planning. And that's not incorrect or wrong by any stretch. But we want to elaborate on that to help strengthen those relationships, to look at more of the qualitative side. And that leads to the title of the presentation today, which is called The Quality of Life. And to deliver that, I'm really honored to introduce John Deal. John has been with Hartford Funds for 33 years. He heads that relationship with MIT, as I had mentioned, and he's one of the very best presenters that I have ever seen. So I'm really excited for John to deliver this presentation and the research to all of you. So with that, I'll turn it to you, John. Thanks very much for your time today.
Thanks, Tom. And as always, thanks for setting the bar up here. So, I have to try and meet those expectations. I appreciate that. And thanks to everybody joining us today. Today, probably a bit of a different topic. It's probably think about a little bit of a different topic. what you might be using when you think about retirement and planning and so on and so forth. But importantly, this presentation is part of our research series with MIT AgeLab, and as Tom with the MIT AgeLab, and as Tom said, for about 20 years now. I've got a team that works with me. That what we do is all across the country, whether virtually or in person. We go around and we speak at conferences. We talk to firms and financial advisors, but most importantly, we speak to you, investors, about how to think about life ahead in an age of longevity. And so today's presentation, The Quality of Life, is based on the MIT AgeLab's research. Now, I want to be, in terms of full disclosure, I want to let you know that I didn't attend MIT. I was in the half of the class that made the top half possible, if you know what I'm talking about. But as I said, I really enjoy our research relationship with MIT, and I am going to share some slides with you today to kind of guide our discussion. So, Tom, I want to make sure that you can see the slides on my screen. Can you?
Yes, we can see them.
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Excellent. Okay, well, let me share with you a little bit, first of all, about who the, whoops, let me see here. My slide, of course, doesn't, there we go. Didn't want to advance there. Let me talk to you a little bit about the MIT AgeLab, who they are and what they do. So located, yes, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, just over the Charles River on MIT's main campus, in a laboratory of about 40 researchers. That's where the MIT AgeLab sits. Now, the MIT AgeLab is not just comprised of engineers, even though being that they're at MIT, you can understand they're well represented. It consists of sociologists, psychologists, anthropologists, physiologists, a whole bunch of ologists, all studying how life is changing due to extended life expectancies, but not only extended life expectancies, how people are living better and healthier, largely driven by revolutions in technology, healthcare technology, communication technology, and the like. They work with, as Tom mentioned, industries and governments around the globe, and with companies specifically in those industries to help them understand how to better design products for the client of tomorrow. That includes, and I think one of the best benefits of working with the AgeLab is that I don't just get to hear information from the financial services industry. We actually get shared research from automotive, retail, healthcare, you name it. So for example, on my slide, you'll see a Volkswagen Beetle. That's the world's only $2 million Volkswagen Bug, because that car is outfitted with all kinds of technology meant to measure driver acceptance of new technology in the automobile. So, you know, maybe some of you today drive automobiles equipped with blind spot warning systems, reverse monitoring systems, automatic braking systems, smart headlights, and the like. Many of those technologies were introduced as part of the study of the aging driver and what might be done inside the automobile to make driving more comfortable and safer as we age. You'll notice the researchers leaning up against the car dressed in funny-looking suits. What they're actually wearing is called an Agnes suit. It's an aging suit. Agnes is an acronym standing for Age Gain Now Empathy System. I could take any of you listening today, regardless of your age, we could dress you in the Agnes suit and calibrate what it would feel like to be 80, 85 years old. I know what some of you are thinking, who in their right mind would want that, right? Restricted movement in the limbs, vision impairment, even neuropathy in the feet, which may change your gait. Imagine if you were the CEO or senior management team of a large American retailer and you were concerned about whether the layout of your stores would accommodate an aging US population. What better way than to dress the senior management team in the Agnes suit, dial them up to age 80 and go shopping in your own stores. So as you go to reach for the high volume item that's always on the very top or very bottom shelves and the pain begins to hit your neck or your lower back, maybe that's what causes the light bulb to go off to say, maybe there's a different way we should go about this design. So folks, I just share that with you to make sure you know that the research that's happening at the AgeLab actually has practical implications for products, services, and maybe even environments that we may find ourselves in moving forward. So where do we want to start today in this discussion about the quality of life in retirement? Well, let me put it to you this way. Let's pretend that instead of talking about planning, retirement, investing, any of that stuff, let's instead say that right in front of you today, there's a jigsaw puzzle, a pile of jigsaw puzzle pieces, and your job is to put that puzzle together. If that were the case, what do you think the most important first step would be? Now, it's funny, when I ask this in front of live audiences, they're always like, well, that's got to be a trick question, right? Maybe he's going to say, flip the pieces over, so on and so forth. Most people will say, find the corners, find the straight edges, right? And that is very, very crucial, important. The most important step, which is crucial step. You have to see a picture on the box. Once you understand what the picture on the box looks like, you can begin to assemble the pieces so that the image on that box begins to come forth. Now, if you're a jigsaw puzzle fanatic, I've had some people say to me, if you look at the picture on the box, that's cheating. I say, if you don't look at the picture on the box, that's crazy, right? So a lot of what we'll talk about today is about how to clarify what the picture on your box looks like. So as part of our agenda today, and again, when we think about how people usually describe quote unquote retirement, we usually see common words being used like relax, like travel or hobbies or freedom, fulfillment, happy, success. In fact, when MIT did this study with over 5,000 people, about 10 words described almost 33% of responses that people had, which says that we have general notions about retirement. Largely what we do is we base life ahead on the stories that we've observed from previous generations. How did our parents or grandparents live out their retirement? What did I like? What did I dislike? So on and so forth. And so today, folks, I want to talk a little bit about your personal agenda. I want to talk about some of the things MIT tells us hampers our ability to see that picture on the box. Most importantly, I want to teach you 3 questions MIT says will predict your future quality of life. And I do want to pause here for a second, because as Tom mentioned, the MIT AgeLab is all about studying the aging demographic in the United States. Unfortunately for me, they defined aging as 45 plus. So these 3 questions are 3 questions MIT says that anyone age 45 or older ought to be asking, if not just about yourself, maybe about someone that you care about, a parent, a sibling, or a friend. And lastly, we'll talk about how the answers to those 3 questions may actually impact the way you choose to plan and invest going forward. So let's talk about those reasons, as I mentioned, that our personal agenda may actually be clouded. It may be really hard to understand. Look, you're asking me what I'm going to be doing in the next 10 years. I don't know what I'm going to be doing in the next 10 minutes. Right? MIT says there are 3 primary reasons, and I'm going to add a 4th, why it's difficult for us to really get clarity on what lies ahead. The first is the volume of issues that we face today. So on your screen is a slide that I call my ride home from work, right? I want you to think about those times in your day where maybe you can catch a few minutes by yourself, and you begin to think about the roles that you play in your family, the responsibilities that come with those roles, the organizations that you belong to, and the commitments you made to them. Maybe they're about your workplace. Maybe it's about your own health. Maybe you're worried about family, children, spouse. Maybe you're thinking about friends and commitments that you've made to them, your aging parents, younger people in your family, the commitments you have to make there. Why has the volume grown so greatly? Because MIT says you are probably managing more issues on a daily basis today than ever before in history. Well, they say it's because, A, longevity has stretched us this way. We're lengthening our time here on Earth, and therefore many of us may live in 4-generation families. Right? As we think about living in 4-generation families, it's also expanded the family from a breadth perspective. Many of us may have more than just parents and one set of parents. We may have step parents, step brothers, step sisters, and the like. And so we think about all these issues that we're dealing with expanded family connections and friend connections, which make those issues ever more emotional. The volume of issues itself is placing a lot of weight on our ability to envision what the future looks like. Secondly, the velocity at which these issues come at us with. Think about, it's only been, I don't know, maybe 20 years since the iPhone was introduced, maybe not even that long. 12 years since the iPhone was introduced in the United States public. Seems like it's been here forever. But all those issues I just mentioned, it now brings those to us 24/7. The blurring of lines between personal and business, between friends and family, so on and so forth. But this technology has also changed how we make decisions. Let me explain that. MIT says the technology we now possess actually impacts the way we research and make decisions in terms of who we trust. Trust trends in the United States, trusting people has gone straight down since 1960. In 1960, if you asked the question, most people can be trusted, yes or no, 56% of people was yes, most people can be trusted. In 2018, the last number I saw, it was around 30%. Think of it, we've lost faith in government, corporate America, celebrities, experts. In fact, if you were around in the 1960s, maybe some of you remember the saying, trust no one over 30. But now that we're all over 30, we've just shortened it to trust no one, right? But who do we trust? We trust other people that we deem to be like us. If I can find someone who has a shared experience. So let me ask today, if you're in a city where you haven't been before, you're hungry, you search for a restaurant, where do you go? Oftentimes you'll go to Yelp or Google, your favorite site, and you'll look for star ratings, but you won't spend your time there. Where will you spend all your time? You will spend it looking for user reviews. What did other people experience there? So the velocity, the issues coming at us, and its impact on our access to information is the third factor, complexity. Think about how much information is available to you on both sides of any argument that you can throw at me today. Good day to drink coffee? Good day to drink red wine? Oh, that's an easy one. Clients always say, always a great day for red wine. How about you thought your blood pressure was in a manageable range? They changed the standard, you're out. How about you learn to eat in my food pyramid? It's not a pyramid anymore, it's now my plate. Just when you thought you knew all the answers, they changed the questions. Folks, what we see in terms of our expectations of advisors, and when I say advisors, I don't just mean financial advisors, I mean real estate, medical, legal. Yes, we want people to present us with information, but oftentimes what we're looking for is more than that. We need insight. Cut through the clutter. I got all the information I need. Just tell me what it is that I need to know. And I'll lay one more factor on top of that, and that is longevity. Folks, today in the United States, if I have two Americans, both age 65 and married, there's now a 50% chance that one of the two will live to age 92. 50% chance, a coin flip. And ladies, I probably don't have to share with you who the odds are in favor of there. Look, if we're retired somewhere in our late 50s, early 60s, even into our 70s, there's a lot of years that are going to need to be filled with things, activities, interests, so on and so forth, maybe work. And so these are what are leading us. These factors are leading us to try and clarify what the picture on the box looks like, because it's awfully hard to do so these days. But that's where these three questions come in. So remember, I told you three questions that anyone age 45 or older ought to be asking on a fairly regular basis. If not about yourself, then about someone that you care about. And I'm going to warn you up front, these questions are going to underwhelm you coming from the rocket scientists at MIT. So you ready? Here are the three questions. Who's going to change your light bulbs? How will I get an ice cream cone? And who will I have lunch with? Now, I know some of you may be scratching your head saying, what in the world is he talking about? But hang with me. There's a method to the madness. I'm going to touch on each one and tell you why each of these questions are important. And honestly, most of the time, especially when I'm in front of in-person audiences, it's only a matter of time till I see people, the wheels start turning, and you may have already guessed at some of the things that I might be hinting at. So let's talk about light bulbs for a second. Did you know that 90%, that's 90% of Americans state that they intend to age in their own homes? But how many of us have spent even 30 to 40 minutes thinking about whether our home will be able to accommodate us as we age? It's very important because when we look at consumer expenses over age 65, these are out-of-pocket, average monthly expenses. Housing takes up about 35% of those out-of-pocket dollars. And by the way, this holds true regardless of income levels up to about $300,000 of household income. You know, the more money we make, oftentimes the more numerous and the larger the homes, therefore the larger the expenses. But as we think about where we're spending money in that housing category, things like home maintenance, housekeeping, delivery services, technology to outfit that home, even home health care, but the fastest growing segment in that housing category is home modifications. Home modifications, why are they so important? Well, folks, I could share with you the top 10 design changes for aging in place. Here's just a couple of samples. No threshold showers, non-slip flooring, lower kitchen counters, easy to reach storage, wider doorways, all of these meant to prevent one thing in the home. What is it? Falling. Because a fall in the home can change the picture on the box in a heartbeat. It's not something that we plan for. But if we plan ahead to think about the homes that we'll be spending our time in, if we do choose to age in place, what kind of modifications will be required? If we look at our home and we say we're not going to be able to age in place there, then what's the plan moving forward? You may decide to upsize. You may decide to downsize. You may decide to move closer to children, or let's be honest, grandchildren. You may want to move away from children or grandchildren. You may need to live with children or grandchildren. You may need the care of a care community moving forward. So MIT, this is kind of interesting. MIT tells us today that for many Americans, you may move as many times after age 50 as you moved prior to age 50. I'll give you a little personal experience. Some of you probably see the stone wall in the background. I'm sitting in my home in Pennsylvania where we raised our family for the last 25 years. My home was built in 1860. It's got foot-thick stone walls. There's not a single full bedroom on the first floor, not a single full bath on the first floor. We hope the children enjoy this home someday because we won't be here. We determined several years ago that we needed to look for where we go next. And where we decided to go next was a single family home in North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. All the bedrooms and bathrooms on one floor, and it's a golf cart ride to the beach, the golf course, the outlet center for my wife and daughters, Walmart, Kroger, and it's about 2 miles from the hospital. So folks, thinking critically, and by the way, that's probably not going to be our last stop. So thinking critically about the homes we live in, what that might look like, not in terms of I'm going to stay here until they cart me out of here, but in terms of if we look at a continuum, what might my next step be in terms of housing? The second question, how will I get an ice cream cone? If I were to ask you about the small things in daily life that make life worth living, I'm not talking about how do you get to doctor's appointments and things like that. I'm just asking the things that make life worth living that you look forward to doing each and every day. What would you say they are? Because this question is all about access. In fact, MIT tells me that if you could tell me these 4 things about yourself, I can probably start to sketch out what the picture on your box looks like. 1, could you tell me where you were educated? When I say education, yes, college, university, but also armed services experience, technical training. Why is that important? Because it may clue me into the kind of people you want to be around with, that you want to associate with as you age. How about where do you recreate? What do you like to do for fun? What are your hobbies? Where do you congregate? Where do you meet and socialize with other people? And lastly, where do you donate? And when I say donate, I mean more than money. Where do you give of your time and your talent? These 4 things, educate, recreate, congregate, and donate, can make up a very important part of what motivates us in retirement. And maintaining access to those things is extremely important. So here's my pie chart again. As I mentioned, housing was number 1. Well, if we click through a little further, food is about 13%. That splits about 60% dining out and 40% in-home groceries. For the dining out part, I could argue congregate or recreate. There's entertainment, that's recreation, cash contributions, donation. And now if I were to ask you what the number 2 category is, out-of-pocket expenditures, age 65 plus, on an average monthly basis, and I'm going to give you a little clue, the answer is not healthcare. The answer is, well, if you can't tell from my picture here, the answer is transportation. By the way, for the gentlemen that are on the call today, you see my buddy there, he's got his arm around his lady friend there, big smile on his face. There's a reason for that. Gentlemen, if you want to be the Casanova of your senior living community, there's one skill you want to keep sharp as you age. And by the way, we've studied this, and it's not dancing. It's driving. And if you can drive at night, rock star status, right? So keep it sharp. But honestly, transportation, let me ask you back to that little story I just told you there. Who was the most popular kid in high school? Wasn't it the one that could get their hands on mom or dad's keys and we could all pile in the car and they gave us access to go places and do things when we wanted to go and do them? See, this is the key, folks, because as we age, as we age to greater lengths, we greatly increase the odds that at some point you may lose the ability to drive. If you do, how will you be able to maintain access to the things that make life worth living? The answers to this generally fall in two categories. One is your use of technology. In 2019, prior to the pandemic, only 13% of Americans over age 65 had ever taken an Uber or a Lyft ride-sharing experience. Now, maybe you're somebody that has, and maybe you think good of the service. That's great. Perhaps you want to share that or share the experience. It's one thing to tell people about it, but it's another to dial up an Uber car and get in with an older relative or a friend who may not trust it yet, who may not be too sure of how it works. That experience can actually be liberating. Don't hold your breath for the Google car. There are technologies out there that can liberate us in terms of access. The second thing that this calls into question is the community in which you intend to age. How accessible are the things that make life worth living? A little clue here. MIT tells us that the fastest growing populations of Americans age 65 plus are occurring in college and university communities. Why is that? Well, they have culture, they have art, they have sports, they often have cutting edge hospitals and medical facilities, and they feature walkable access to many of the things we desire, like restaurants, grocery stores, entertainment venues, movie theaters, and the like. So thinking about access is very important. That's the whole point of the second question. It's all about access. And yes, I talked a little bit about technology, so I'm going to move on to our third question, which I think is the most important of the three questions. Who will I have lunch with deals with your social network. Yes, folks, your friends are crucially important to social aging. Why is this important when we talk about retirement? Because we think about, for 20, 25, 30 years, we've been going to work perhaps. We've been in the same routine. We have a whole social network around work, and then one day we say, hey, we're done with that. If then we go into retirement and we just expect to meet new relationships at the rate that we did earlier in our lives, it doesn't happen that way. We need to be more intentional about maintaining our social network as we go forward. By the way, this is harder for men to achieve than it is for women to achieve. We see that women more quickly rebuild social networks after leaving the primary place of employment. Why is this? Well, despite their growing importance in the U.S. labor force, women typically retain the role of chief operating officer of the household, planning things for the family to do, maintaining connections between family members. Men, sometimes we sit back a bit, and it makes it harder for us when we do retire. We take ourselves out of our environment into another one. However, what I will tell you is that your friends do two really important things for you as you age. It's your friends that get you up off the couch, physically moving, getting you out in the world, doing things that you look forward to, which leads to the second point. They also bring mental stimulation, a reason to circle the date on the calendar, things to look forward to, opportunities and challenges, so on and so forth. So as my comic strip says, Dad says, at last the kids have grown up. Now there's time for us. Mom says, great, you stay here and mind us while I go get a life. Guys, get your track shoes on, but be intentional about the relationships because they're important. Why are they important? Demographically, Americans have been having smaller families. So although we may remember a family situation where I was part of a family of 8, chances are we may have only had 2 children or 1 child, or sometimes we had no children at all. How does this look different for me? Maybe I never even married. In that case, what does the picture on my box look like in terms of social engagement? The other point of this is that we know today that 70% of Americans live in suburban and rural communities where if they lost the ability to drive, maintaining access to the people, activities, and organizations that make life worth living, it would be really stressful. And folks, I will just tell you, one of the things that the AgeLab shared with us is it doesn't matter what your age. If you reflect back on the last 18 months, we all know what it now feels like to be isolated from the people, activities, organizations, and things that make life worth living when we were in various phases of lockdown. What I'm telling you is that as we age, we need to consciously push back against that isolation as part of healthy living, thinking about where to refresh our social networks in. Why is this also important? Because with smaller families, we may not have as many caregivers in the family as we did in previous generations. And therefore, who may fill those gaps? Many times it's going to be that friend that lives next door, the friend from church or temple who can come and help me, if I need something or I need a ride or whatever that may be. So your social network becomes even more important. But especially, this is true, we ask this every time we get people together who've hit age 90, 95, 100 years old. This comes from MIT alumnus who were graduated at least 50 years. They say the key to healthy aging is that you have to have a reason to get up in the morning. That may mean working full or part-time. It may be volunteering for a cause you believe in. These are the things that bring joy. So be conscious about creating new social connections. Challenge yourself. Think about whatever you did last year or for the past 5 years may not be the things that you do in the next year or 5 years. Then again, they may be. How do we bring people in? And before I leave this slide, I just want to point out a crucial point in this social network piece is the last bullet point, which is you want to make sure and include younger people in your social network. Why? Two really important reasons. One is young people bring a certain amount of energy, right? There's a certain amount of volatility and unpredictability, but more important, by integrating younger people into your social network, you'll virtually guarantee that you won't outlive your social network. I don't know if many of you know, as I do in my own circumstance, I've had friends and relatives that have lost many of those around them that made life worth living. You don't want to be the last man standing. Some may argue it beats the alternative, but not if you talk to any of those folks who say, well, I've lost a lot of my friends. There's not a lot I can do anymore. We should constantly be looking to refresh that. Young people do keep us young in terms of our social networks. And so, folks, I thought I'd round out my pie chart for you. Talking about entertainment, cash contributions, yes, but there's healthcare. Healthcare at 14%, fastest growing piece of the pie. Doesn't have anything to do with Medicare changes or anything like that. But maybe some of you on the call can testify better than I can. We're in the midst of a healthcare revolution in the United States today. New pharma pipelines, new devices, new therapies, new procedures that may help us not only live longer, but live better. Very important, but a lot of times those procedures, devices, medicines, not covered by social insurance, so they're coming out of pocket. So what does this all have to do, these three questions? Well, remember we talked earlier about the puzzle pieces, right? I think the most underestimated aspect of a quality relationship with a competent financial firm and financial advisor is not necessarily just the investment advice. I already trust them to do that. It's the ability to share insight with you to allow you to envision what the picture on your box looks like, to ask challenging questions that help you to clarify what that picture looks like so that once clarified, you can begin to assess the pieces that you've collected and then make sure they fit together efficiently. And when I say efficiently, yes, tax efficiently, but really more importantly, efficiently within your plan to get things done the way you want to have them done that matches the image on your box. The folks at MIT tell it to me this way. They say, look, every time we talk about planning, retirement, all that stuff, we automatically go to the quantitative side. Stocks, bonds, cash, assets, liability, net worth, just the facts. As Tom kind of said up front, it's not that that's incorrect. It is, however, incomplete. In fact, what they would say, what the researchers tell me, is they use an old business school analogy. They say, imagine that you go to the hardware store and you buy a drill bit, and an extension cord. Did you go to the hardware store because you really, really wanted a drill bit, and extension cord? Not usually. What is it that you really wanted? You really wanted the whole. In fact, I gave that analogy to one client, and he came up to me after I was finished speaking and said, I don't want a hole, I want a picture on the wall. right? We need to think about what it is that we're trying to get done. And all those pieces are just the methods, if you will, or they're pieces to the puzzle of helping us achieve that. So building our wealth is important, but thinking about how we allocate that wealth to things that will add to our quality of life, as I posed today, housing, access to those things that are important to us, and social relationships, very, very important. This is Dr. Joe Coughlin. Dr. Coughlin is the founder and still current director of the MIT AgeLab. And I'm going to end it with a quote from him and then a quote from my favorite philosopher, Yogi Berra. Dr. Coughlin puts it this way. He says, effective planning must be about more than just financial security. The new face of planning goes beyond money and adopts an integrated and holistic approach to help people live longer and live well. As I said, I will end with a quote from my favorite philosopher, Yogi Berra, who famously said, the future ain't what it used to be. Basing our retirement picture, if you will, simply on what we've experienced in past generations probably isn't going to satisfy what most of us are going to desire for the next 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years that we'll spend in that next phase of life. And so, folks, I also want to share with you, we're going to share with Bill that was written by the researchers at MIT. It's a white paper that's written by the researchers at MIT that's a summary of some of the things that I talked about today. And I would invite, if you want more than one, I'm sure Bill will be, happy to get them for you. We can have hard copies. We can also send you the PDF that you're welcome to share, a white paper that summarizes what we talked about today. Also, we'll send you a client worksheet. And when we send out this worksheet, you're going to notice there's a lot of white spaces on it. If I mentioned something today that touched a nerve on something that you've been thinking about for yourself or a family member, I would encourage you to jot it down. And the next time you have a conversation with your advisor, or you come in for an appointment, bring it with you and have a conversation around it. Why is that on the top of your mind? What are the potential solutions you've envisioned? Because oftentimes, as I said, the most underrated aspect of working with a great advisor is getting their insight, either based on what they themselves have gone through personally, or maybe they've helped another client in a similar situation as what you're experiencing. No true transitions are the same when we're dealing with life challenges, but oftentimes, kind of like what Mark Twain said, history may not repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes. So folks, I want to take this time again to thank you on behalf of Hartford Funds and the MIT AgeLab for joining us today. And I wanted to invite Bill back in to see, Bill, if there were any questions or comments that might have come back. I was not monitoring the question box per se.
Yeah, no, and first of all, John, great stuff. Thank you so much, and thanks for sharing that. And it's interesting. John and I spoke obviously a couple times before this presentation, and he said, Bill, you probably won't have any specific questions right after the presentation, but as people digest this and they think about it, I think conversations will evolve. And so as they do, I'd urge you, as John said, reach out to your advisor and have those conversations so we can be intentional about what our path looks like moving forward as we age. So John, thanks for that. One question though is some of the other topics that you cover or that you all have discussed in regards to conversations you've had with MIT AgeLab.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Bill. I mean, we, as I've said, we've had a 20-year relationship kind of talking about these kind of issues. There are a number of different presentations that we do. One of my personal favorites is called 5 Ways Technology Will Change the Way You Age. And what's important about that is that the 5 ways technology will change the way you age are all based on these 3 questions that I just asked you. They may be technologies that can keep us in our home a little bit longer and safer. It may be technologies allowing us to drive more safely and lengthen the time that we're able to transport ourselves. It may be technologies that we're using to stay in contact with other people, or technologies that keep us working, or technologies that help us around managing medical situations. So that presentation, 5 Ways Technology Changes the Way You Age, what I really like about it is that it allows us to actually pinpoint specific technologies. It's not theoretical. There are apps and devices that are available on the market today that oftentimes people come away from that topic and go, wow, I never realized there was an app or technology that can help me do this. That's one that's a lot of fun. We have other topics that really do talk about kind of keeping perspective on, if you will, the later stages of life. When I say later stages, the last 30 or 40 years, that could be more than the previous 30 or 40 years. And how longevity, technology, and again, shifting demographics is changing roles that we play in our family, roles that we'll play in the workforce, and help us just to think a little bit differently. But Bill, since you brought it up, the technology topic is one of my favorites.
Thanks, and I'm glad the question was asked, because yeah, and John and Tom and I have both spoken, and we will be doing this as a series, as I mentioned at the start, and that next topic will be just that, technology, and how will it change how we age. So I'm glad you got a chance to kind of just tease that out a little bit. And just a couple other things. Well, interesting one, there was a comment, John, they really like your background in the house that you have there, and they said it looked very beautiful, so I wanted to share that with you.
I'm not far from Valley Forge Park, if anyone knows where that is. So historical homes all over the area, but this has been a labor of love, as most old homes are. So thanks very much for the compliment. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you. And then just one other comment. This has been recorded. So as you've listened to this, and as John said, whether you're younger, older, or you're thinking about somebody you will either be taking care of, or you're thinking about your children and their future, or your parents, this is recorded. So if you find this informative and you would like to have this forwarded to somebody, please let us know. Reach out to your advisor. And also, as John mentioned, the worksheet and kind of the white paper, obviously more than happy to get that to anybody that has interest. So to sum it up, one, thanks for everybody for taking the time today. I hope you found this valuable. I know I did, and I look forward to more of these. And John and Tom, thank you so much for your leadership on this and commitment to it. We really appreciate the partnership. And Paula Brennan, many of you know who Paula is. Paula, thank you so much for your coordination and organization of this. So with that, I hope everybody has a wonderful late afternoon and evening, and we look forward to hearing from you. Take care.